So now we get an opportunity to join us in welcoming the final keynote to the stage, Gregory Zuckerman, right? Do you guys know who that is? It's Mark's brother, no kidding. Special writer at the Wall Street Journal and author of The Man Who Saved the Maker. Welcome Gregory to the stage.
Hello, everybody. I cannot see a little bit. I can see a little bit. I'm being joined in a moment by Aaron. Until then, they've asked me to sing a couple of my favorite. Just kidding. I think I'm supposed to kill time. I think until Aaron Task joins me. We're going to talk about a book I just wrote called "The Man Who Solved the Market." I think she said "the maker," but she missed an R. I think one letter. Not too much laughing out there. This is my stand-up. This is my attempt. All right, and here he is.
Right.
All right, so maybe not. Close.
Oh, so wait, you introduced me? That's awesome.
Yeah, right? How do you like
It's
that?
supposed to be the way around.
Yeah, it's all good.
Right, so in case you didn't know, we're standing between everybody and drinks, so no pressure.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
Thanks. All right, The Man Who Solved the Market. You've had other books.
I have.
I think, as I've told you, The Greatest Trade Ever is one of my favorite investment books of all time, but there's something about this book that's really resonating with people right now. What is it you're thinking about this moment in time, this story that's tapping so much into the zeitgeist of what's happening?
So I wrote a book about a guy named Jim Simons and his firm, Renaissance Technologies, and in some ways they're the pioneers when it comes to all the stuff going on in Silicon Valley. They're out in Long Island, they're at the tip of Long Island, far out there, but they were developing algorithms, predictive algorithms, back in the late 70s and early 80s, and clearly by the mid 80s they were dedicated to this approach. It took them a little while, they weren't sure, and they were really early machine learning even.
Right.
Basically creating a system to make trades for the firm. And no one was even thinking about that stuff. They were also early in terms of like big data and collecting data and cleaning data. No one was cleaning data back then. So I think in some ways, because it's an investing book, but it's also a technology book, it seems, I think. I don't
Right,
know,
so and obviously we're at the Benzinga Global FinTech Awards, and this is such an interesting growing market right here. But these guys, as you were saying, they've been doing it for 30 plus years. So they're the pioneers, the godfathers, how would you describe them, of FinTech itself?
Yeah, in some ways, they influence a lot of people because especially on Wall Street, everyone wanted to be like them, and today especially. But in some ways, they really didn't because they're the most secretive firm out there. So everyone was trying to get little hints of what they were doing and adjust accordingly, try to build their own models like Renaissance and Jim Simons did. So yeah, they're the pioneers, and they've influenced a lot of people, but they've been under the radar screen for a long time.
Right, and certainly the fact that Jim Simons specifically is he's kind of like the Howard Hughes of the financial world.
Yeah, I think he showers sometimes. Yeah. Once in a while.
Let's hope, but yeah, I mean he has been reclusive for sure, and you were able to get interviews with him and many of his top partners and former executives at the firm. So what surprised you as you did the research on this book about Jim particularly and Renaissance Technologies?
I guess it was how long it took him. I'll take a little step back in a second and tell you who he is, but how long it took him to embrace this quantitative, algorithmic, rules-based approach. So Jim Simons is a preeminent mathematician, a geometer, one of the greatest mathematicians over the last 50, 75 years. And he built algorithms for the government during the Cold War as they tried to break code against the Russians. So if someone is going to be comfortable with this approach, using developing predictive algorithms, turning the decisions over to machines, as it were, you would think it would have been this guy. He led a math department at Stony Brook, an acclaimed mathematician, as I said. And yet, throughout a long stretch of years I write about in the book, it was a back and forth. Should I be investing and making my decisions like everybody else, sort of like opening up the paper and trying to figure out where the market's going and interest rates and all that kind of stuff. And throughout the years, it was back and forth. So even in his colleagues as well. So it's not easy, it's actually difficult to hand decisions over to machines, right. I found, even for these guys, especially for people like me, but for these gentlemen as well.
Well, do you think, again, getting back to my original question about this moment in time, do you think we're more ready as a society to do that?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the best companies today, you look at the Tencents and Amazon and Netflix, it's all predictive algorithms, right? The sad part for me as a citizen is those decisions are the commerce and investing when it comes to the gentleman I wrote about, Jim Simons, but when it comes to the most important decisions in our lives, in the White House, the Federal Reserve, Congress, it's still gut instinct and judgment
And raw politics
intuition and politics, right? There are no rules-based decisions there. It's not to say that's foolproof, and some would argue that some combination of we call it quantification, something where the humans are adapting and working, complementing with this quanti approach. Maybe that's the best, but clearly using your gut instincts all the time is not the best decision.
Right. Well, essentially, I mean, I'm having worked in media many years, like last 10 years, you hear a lot about we're going to be data driven. We're going to be data driven. But most of the places I've been, and I know you can't speak about the Wall Street Journal, but we say that, but we don't actually do it. Right, so it's the implementation, as you're alluding to with Simon too, that it's hard to do as human beings to say, you know what, I'm going to turn over control.
Although most sophisticated businesses, I think, are starting to realize they need to. I mean, if you look at even like sports teams, right? Sabermetrics, analytics, they get it, and you do slowly see in the bigger companies the shift in appreciation. Data science is a huge. I was just talking to my kid. I'm like, you should be looking at data science, right? Everyone's programming computers. Right. If you're on Wall Street today, I mean, I heard a presentation recently. BlackRock, everybody they hire has to have some sense of how to program. You got to at least have done it, take a course or two. So I do think that the sophisticated businesses in this country get it. I'm just not sure our leaders necessarily do.
Right. So, but what does that mean, do you think, for people in the fintech industry? Is that positive development for them, or can they capitalize on that, or is that if it's outside your purview, that's fine too. I'm just kind of curious.
I mean, there's nothing hotter now. So in some ways, it's great because this is where it's at. In other ways, everybody is getting on board, so there's more competition. Right. There are a lot of Me Too kind of issues. Not that kind of Me Too, but people jumping on board and trying to do it and not doing it in the best way. There may be other Me Too issues that I don't even know about the fintech. Feel free to email me at the Journal if you. Any good stories?
Always reporting.
Yes, always digging. But no, this is where it's at. This is, the old school, the really smart Wall Street trader type that you envision, you remember reading about or seeing in movies and stuff. Just they're not there anymore. Those guys who are quick on their feet and could calculate, or even the people that used to get an executive in front of them and were good at grilling them and getting information out of them. I mean, I read about it in my book, the whole idea of getting an information advantage. That's where the money was made for decades, and then that's changed. And it's part of the reason why it's so hard for these traditional investors to outperform. You can't grill an executive like you used to. There's Reg FD, everything has to be a playing field. So yeah, everything has really changed. And if you've got some skills in the area, you're in the catbird seat. Right,
so and just to be clear, when you say traditional investors, you're not just talking about mom and pop retail investors. You're talking about the traditional mutual fund manager, the old
hedge fund guy, yeah.
Right.
It used to be the case that, let's say you traded a lot, you got in exchange information when the analysts were going to raise, put a buy signal on. And it wasn't illegal necessarily. It crossed lines sometimes, but it wasn't always improper. But you can't do that kind of stuff anymore. And it's true in DC also. I was down in DC not that long ago, and I was talking to one of these consultant kind of guys whose job it is to traffic information. And he said, here too, no longer can I sell my services based on the fact that I've got some insight into this committee and what they're going to do. That's kind of out there. Information, it's much more transparent. There are all kinds of media organizations covering that stuff. Now it's more like high-level analysis. That's what he's selling. So it's true information. You don't get information advantage on Wall Street or in other places.
Or anywhere else too. Right. Yeah. So I realize I may have buried the lead here a little bit. So the subtitle of this presentation is, the secrets of the greatest moneymaker in history. Like, for those who don't know, Jim Simons and Renaissance Technologies, their returns since they launched their prime fund have been astronomical.
They're sick. Yeah, 66% a year since 1988. That's before fees.
Which are extremely high, but
Yeah, well, after fees, it's just 39% a year. So
only 39.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. They've done. So this is the greatest money-making machine Wall Street has ever seen.
Right, and you say also that it's as much an investing story as a technology and management story.
Sure.
So what's the management side of this business?
So what Jim Simons did and does, what his people do today, is they target and then they hire the best minds. And usually it's in science, mathematics as well. They don't hire anybody from Wall Street. And everyone says today they've got PhDs. Every firm on Wall Street, oh, I've got a PhD. Take a look at him. He's down that corner over there. They point the investors to. The difference is Renaissance is these aren't just PhDs. These are people that ran departments, like this guy David Donahue, who ran Stanford, a department at Stanford. These are huge people who are acclaimed. So, but a lot of these people don't care about investing, don't care about markets, don't care about trading, don't even care about getting rich, believe it or not, until they get there. Once they get there, everybody likes getting wealthy. But and yet Simons has to somehow lure them in, and that's what he's been great at, wooing them.
And I apologize if this is in the book, and I don't know, but do you make any comparisons to what Renaissance Technologies has done? Because what you were just describing sounds to me like long-term capital management, right? Which was famously a fund that did phenomenally well until it really didn't, and then it blew up.
Yeah, so there are similarities. They're not the same. They weren't scientists, those guys. They were more economists, but they used models, yeah. Right. And people within Renaissance in 1988, when LTCM blew up, they were kind of concerned. Hey, do we have to worry about that too? There's a lot of differences. Part of the difference is LTCM was beholden to their model, and when their model said you should buy more, they bought more, and they got in some trouble. The Renaissance people say they're a little more modest and humble about their models. So there are times when they don't work, and they figure out why it's not working. They don't double down as much. There are differences as well, other differences I mentioned in the book. But yeah, they themselves were concerned about the similarities.
That's very interesting. And getting back to this idea of how difficult it is to turn things over to the machines, you write about how just about a year ago, or a little bit, late 2018, the market started falling apart a little bit. And Jim Simons, who's already a multi-billionaire at this point, he started to get worried about the market and almost made some emotional, rash decisions.
Right, so I kind of assumed Jim Simons, he's a mathematician, he's the quant, he's worth $23 billion. The lesson of his life and of the story is that machine statistical analysis is better done than human analysis. Emotion is set to the side, et cetera. And yet, late last year when the market was collapsing, Simon's on vacation in Beverly Hills with his wife, sees the market going down, he's watching CNBC like everybody else, and he kind of panics a little bit and calls the head of his family office. He's like, hey, shouldn't we be buying some protection here? And it just kind of showed me that he didn't necessarily, when we talked about it, appreciate the irony, but to me, it's so rich that the quant, the guy, the forefather, the pioneer himself isn't still bought in 100%. And yeah, there is a lesson there that it's hard to turn decisions over to machines, even when you should.
Right. So yeah, the father and a billionaire many times over at this point too.
23 billion, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he, it wasn't like he was gonna go hungry if he didn't.
Right. But it's also reassuring. Even I panic. He panicked.
We
too,
all panic,
yeah.
Right? So I'm panicking now because I almost lost my questions here. But there was one more I wanted to ask you about. Just
management stuff.
The management stuff. Like, you were alluding to this before. He didn't hire people from Wall Street. He hires Bob Mercer from IBM. Again, the company is Renaissance Technologies. It's not Renaissance Capital, not Renaissance Investments. Did you talk to him or folks there about that and how that framed their approach differently than other places?
Yeah, they don't see themselves necessarily as a trading firm. Their competition for talent is really Facebook and Google and those kind of companies, not necessarily Goldman Sachs and D. Shaw. So they see themselves as trying to find that kind of talent. And the key is, how do you get them to come over? If these are academics a lot of the time who don't care so much about getting rich, how do you hire them? So what Jim always did was present a problem and present a challenge. And this is what a lot of people really want in that world, but elsewhere too. I have a quote in my book from another executive saying that human curiosity is just much more powerful than even greed. And they set up this as a challenge. Their firm, Renaissance Technologies, tried to solve the market, and it's an age-old problem. And they said, come over, help us. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of challenge here. Help us figure out, solve the market. And that's one way. He had others as well to get people on the same page, lure them in, and attract the best talent.
Right, so something we'd all take away as we're trying to recruit for various businesses, like how do you recruit the best people? Give them a challenge. I mean, I don't want to say gamification because that sounds like it's not giving it enough credit, but appeal to their highest aspirations. Like, what is it what you really want to do here? Right,
exactly. And he had a way of figuring out what everyone's motive, how to motivate each person. And he got people to work on the same page, and he did that by rewarding even the people that did things like cleaning data. And he was really early at collecting the data and cleaning it. And you know, a lot of firms even today, you're working on the data, you're crunching the data. Maybe you don't
Right.
get rewarded like the guy who comes up with the signal in the quant world or the trade. But they do still do that. So there's a way of rewarding people and getting people on the same page as well.
So again, we just got a little less than a minute left. You mentioned, I referenced before how secretive this firm has been. Again, it's a reason why some people are so interested in this book, and congratulations on it. Would anybody there tell you about like how they do this? Like they're still incredibly secretive, aren't they, about what they do and also in tracking their trades, correct? Like, you know, they don't want anybody to even see the trades after the fact.
Yeah, they're pretty paranoid, and for good reason. It's a very competitive world. They've got these 30-page non-disclosures, so they're not supposed to talk to people like me. But I do think that they've done something remarkable. So a lot of people wanted to talk, not on the record, but a lot of people wanted to talk, people who work there right now and left, because at the end of the day, there's a paradox here. It should not have been Jim Simons and his colleagues who conquered the market. It should have been people who actually care about investing, who grew up reading about Buffett or Graham and Dodd and all that kind of stuff. And yet it was mathematicians and scientists who don't care about investing. A lot of these people, their spouses do their personal investing for them. So I think they appreciate the paradox here, and that it's a great, remarkable, to me, a remarkable story, and that they wanted to talk even if it wasn't on the record.
All right, so it's the man who solved the market, Greg Zuckerman. So before I let you go, you're already hinting at your next book in this book. What can you tell us about your next book?
That was a joke.
Okay. I
Yes.
wasn't sure if that was a joke or not.
It was a joke. I referenced the golden age of pornography, which I'm not writing about as a book, but as my wife will confirm.
Yeah.
But some people did. You throw a joke, you can't tell how it goes over. It's like an email kind of thing,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Sometimes you have to be careful. So I did. I was about to speak up at Columbia a few weeks ago, and at the end, the professor said, "This is one topic I don't want to talk about. It's your next book." So the reason I referenced it, it came up because. Peter Brown, one of the senior executives at this firm, he used to work at IBM, and while he was at IBM, he was involved with that group that was building a computer to beat chess masters, and they called it, at one point they called it Deep Think.
Deep Think?
Deep Think, and then people got confused with Deep Throat. Hence the reference to the golden age of pornography, but I will not be writing about that. I'm eager to hear what I should be writing about next, so feel free to email me or reach out to me on LinkedIn or what have you.
Yes, always
Twitter.
reporting, always working
There
it.
you
Greg,
go.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.